As an actor, when you're being represented by an agency, that's a big deal because you're on your way with your acting career. Your agent begins placing you in front of casting directors left and right, and you begin getting exposure, which is what we want. It's like I said, every email you received with a booked subject line, you felt closer to your goal. So if you ask any actor, which would be a major role in a feature film on the big screen. I had a wonderful agency that represented me. I was booking commercials for retail stores, fast food chains, restaurants. Things were going great. I slowly started to audition for film casting directors, which is what I really wanted. Dallas is more on the commercial side, so you get a lot more commercial auditions than you do any film. But when you did get those film auditions, you prepared 10 times as much more. Some of the people that I got to audition for were really known in their region. They were known for the best of their region because they had major titles under their belt. So you definitely wanted to do your best anytime you were in front of them because it wasn't that often. There was a time where I was doing a workshop and I walked in and the casting director was like, "Hey, Carla, so if we're a casting director, especially a big one like this one, who sees hundreds, even thousands of faces on tapes or in person in auditions on a weekly basis, to have known my name, that was a big deal for me." And then I also remember getting an email from my agents who received a message from 2 casting directors that were film, were very impressed and were speaking very highly of me. So I knew things were getting way better. I had yet to book with them, but I knew it was just a matter of time. I could really feel I was getting closer. I was on the radar and I was determined. I was ready and I knew that role that I've been striving for was coming. So why did I leave? Especially when things were looking better than ever in my acting career. It was because of God. Please don't misunderstand me. He didn't force me to give it up. No, I felt like he asked me to, and I chose to accept. When I decided to make Christ the center of my life, for me it meant, to follow him wherever he led me to. Now, I never thought that he would ask me to let go of what I loved the most, which was my acting career. I couldn't understand it. I kept asking, why would you ask me to do this, God? But all I could hear was to trust him. I kind of felt like Jasmine in the movie Aladdin, where Aladdin reaches out to her with his hand and says, "Do you trust me?" Just as Jasmine reached back out to Aladdin, I felt like I did the same with God. I didn't know where he was taking me, but I decided to put my faith in him. It wasn't until a few months later that he actually began responding to my question as to why. This is what I feel he shared. I was becoming very proud. And if you know the Bible, when you're proud, that means that you are rebelling against God. I began thinking of myself higher than others, showing off everything I did, saying who I knew, and by knowing them made me famous by affiliation. And it was like a look at me attitude. Don't get me wrong, like I do feel that when we share our hard efforts and stuff, there's nothing wrong with that. It's just the heart and attitude behind it, which was what I was doing. I was being arrogant, and it was very subtle. It wasn't something, because I asked a couple of friends around me and they're like, "No, I didn't notice that, But that doesn't mean that it wasn't there. You could definitely see where my attitude was heading. So I really do feel like the Lord taught me to remain humble, and I began reading about who Jesus was and his humility and selflessness and attitude. So it was a great lesson. The second thing I feel he shared with me is that I was losing my identity. When you get cast into a role, of course you want to do the best you can with that performance. You can get so consumed by perfecting the character. Even unconsciously, you can begin mixing the traits of the character to your real life. Not sure if you've ever seen a movie where you connect so much to the character and you kind of say, I want to be more like them. Can you imagine actually taking it a step further and being that character? When you're given a role, you get a description of the character, and they explain attributes of that role they want you to portray. It could be a person that is passive aggressive or was affected by domestic abuse, maybe trauma after their parents died in an accident, or someone who has the most wonderful spouse and you're madly in love with that person. Actors value their work so much that they want to do their best for the audiences. They get so consumed by the perfection of the character. They're really experiencing the emotions themselves and putting themselves in that situation. But even after you complete that job, you get to a place in your mind where you're not able to distinguish what's the character and what's your life anymore. It's like you don't know what's your true self, and identifying that from what those emotions that you were pretending to be. And it really makes me wonder about those celebrities who committed suicide after performing a major role or after performing so many different roles. That's something that they struggle with. Then eventually you get to a point where you begin comparing your life to the performances you're doing. And even when I was just watching movies at home, I would look at, the big house or the spouse, the perfect body, just the life they had. And I was like, why don't I have that? Don't get me wrong, I'm not saying these things are bad, but when the foundation of it is comparison, then I don't think that's a healthy perspective. Being consumed by entertainment, in this case with movies for me, was really harming my walk with God and who I am. I once read, entertainment is the devil's substitute for joy. And that was very profound to me. Joy is one of the fruits of the Spirit, and through my walk with the Lord, I've learned that the devil always takes what belongs to God and creates a counterfeit for us to fall for. I believe that just as we need to be mindful of the music we listen to, it goes the same with what we watch. It can also hinder us personally and even the relationships around us. You can eventually get to a point where you have the expectations that you see on the screen in your real life, and then open the door for disappointment when it doesn't happen that way. Now, I'm not saying I'm going to stop watching movies forever. Of course not. I love movies. But I know now to be aware of how easily we can stumble if we don't protect our hearts and minds. Looking back on this journey, I think the biggest revelation I received was how much God truly loves me. He saw the path this was taking me on, and He took me out of it. I know God would never ask us to sacrifice something or even someone with the intention to hurt us. On the contrary, I believe that He takes what's hurting us and restores what's broken inside. Would I ever go back into the industry? Absolutely, but only if the Lord led me to it. Knowing what I know now, I have a clearer picture of what my purpose would be if I did. This is my personal testimony. That doesn't mean that everything I said applies to everybody in the industry. And some people may not understand it, and that's okay. I don't expect them to. But I believe that there is a possibility that a lot of people struggle with it too. I think that loss of identity is a major issue in our society. If we don't learn to know who we are in Christ, we're going to be lost in whatever we do. Whether you're an actor, a parent, a business owner, a trainer, an athlete, a teacher. If we're putting our efforts and thoughts into something or someone that's not God, then our identity's in the wrong place. When I first left my agency, my question was like, well, if I'm not an actress, then who am I? We do things for so long that we feel that they're so attached to us that they become a part of who we are. God showed me His most pure love and reminded me that my identity comes from Him, not from anything I do, and I'm really grateful for that. I wanted to end this by asking you this question. If today you stop doing what you feel like you were born to do, whether you're a teacher, a parent, a spouse, athlete, a singer, whatever it is, would you know who you are? And if you don't, or you're unsure, it is a great place to begin asking God to show you your identity is in Him. And regardless of what you do in this life, that's never going to change. He showed me, and I pray that He does that for you too, because I know He will. And if you're watching this and you're not a believer, the identity issue can still happen. If who you are depends on your profession or a specific person, then what would happen to you if that profession or that person was no longer there? I encourage you to ask about Christ. And the most precious and most comforting feeling is that He never leaves.